Hi, I'm Nick Dawson, the editor-in-chief of Talkhouse Film, and you're listening to the Talkhouse Film Podcast. Rian Johnson, the writer-director of Brick, The Brothers Bloom, and Looper, has seen Terry Gilliam's Brazil more times than anyone I know. Gilliam's latest movie, The Zero Theorem, is a companion piece of sorts to Brazil, the dystopic tale of a computer genius called Cohen Leth who's trying to find out definitively whether life has any meaning or not. I thought it'd be cool to put Johnson and Gilliam together for a podcast, and it went so well that what you're listening to is just part one of a conversation we're running across 2 consecutive days on Talkhouse Film. So settle in and enjoy these 2 great directors talking about not just the Zero Theorem, but also the pitfalls of social media, modern movie watching, and yes, quite a lot about Johnson's upcoming project, Star Wars Episode VIII.
Hello, Ryan.
Hello, Terry. How are you? I'm good. I'm glad that we have our time together here.
It was lovely.
So lovely. So good. I really love the Zero Theorem, man. I love your new movie. I think it's beautiful, and it really had a huge emotional effect on me.
That's great, because that's the kind of stuff I like hearing, because there's so many people that has no emotional effect on. There's so many people that say 2 hours of my life was wasted watching a film.
Yeah, fuck those people. That's not their time. This is our time, right? No, and I guess I'll start out just saying that because I'm, your work means so much to me. In Brazil, I've seen as many times as any other movie. Probably I've seen that movie so many times.
That's great.
So it and in many ways, I don't know if it's because of that or if it's, but I think there are actual connections. I couldn't help but watch the Zero Theorem kind of in conversation in a way with Brazil, and even it feels like as opposed to where paper was the enemy in Brazil, screens are very much this constant threat in Zero Theorem. And even that, the beautiful, and I thought really incredibly sad ending on the beach, it made me think of the image I've heard you describe a lot of times of the guy on the beach with the radio that was that original Brazil. And
that's really good. I mean, that you've connected something that I never even thought about. That's great.
This notion, that kind of escape as something that emotionally looks beautiful, but is still in a way a tragic ending. I don't know, that especially in the context of kind of the escaping into this cyber netherworld that feels very real right now. I don't know. It really made me sad at the end.
This is the best review I've heard for a long time. No, because that's exactly the right emotion one should have at the end of that. I mean, it is so sad that to me, it's the only thing he's been able to control in his life. And it's not even his imaginary world. It's Bainsley's, and to let the sun set, to finally. It was so weird, because that is not the ending of the film as scripted, as shot.
What was the original ending?
A happy Hollywood ending. And I shot all of this. I shot it all. Christoph acted it. Everybody did their bit. And I got in the first assembly of the thing, I looked at the film and I said, "This is utter shit." And I just threw it away. Fuck it. I just thought, no, you've got to leave Cohen with some dignity, feeling strong, having, and it's sad, because the only sort of dignity and strength he has is in this virtual world.
Yeah,
it's really tragic. But anyway, I'm glad you experience the ending as I hoped.
Oh, good. Yeah. Well, I thought it was gorgeous. Well, how do you? I mean, I don't know. Are you? How active are you on the internet? What are your thoughts on the? Because obviously the Zero Theorem, it's set in that world very much. It's very present in our times, so it's obviously something you're really aware of.
Yeah.
How much do you actually engage it in, and what do you kind of think?
I do. I mean, the sad thing is, as a result of making this film and having to identify with the main character, I have become Cohen. I live on my computer. I just checked my Facebook page before the phone rang.
Right.
It's sad, and that's what scares me about it. It's so addictive. It's so easy. It's so much, in a sense, easier than going out and deal with the tactile real world out there.
Yeah.
And it's my own weakness that I suppose I'm worried about. And I assume if I'm as weak and addicted as that, there must be one or two other people on the planet like that as well.
I have the exact same thing. It's I'm not on Facebook, but Twitter is kind of my pleasure bar. I'm like the little rat hitting the pleasure bar in a cage, checking that. It's terrifying.
How do you do that? I did what I swore I'd never do. I finally went on Twitter yesterday.
Yeah.
And I tweeted.
Yeah.
And I fear what that would do, because everything is so immediate, and then the responses, then you either respond or you don't. And I just think and I've almost gone cold turkey now after my first tweet, because I don't want to get hooked on that.
If you can get out early, get out. Yeah, stay away. I feel
like it's too late for you.
It's too late for me, but I feel like the grizzled old rock star saying, "Don't get on that stuff, man. It leads nowhere good." Yeah, it's really, it's kind of insidious in the way that it's also it's insidious in the way that it's wonderful, and in the way that there's that incredible immediate rush of feeling connected to other people. It's obviously an illusion. What really scares me is even the baby steps I try and take to get off of it. It's like when I try and stop drinking coffee and I get terrible headaches, and I have that horrifying realization of how hooked I actually am on coffee. Yeah. If I just say, okay, I'm going to delete the Twitter app off of my phone, then I find myself, it's almost like coming to as a sleepwalker, and I find myself checking it on the web browser on my phone, realizing just how deep this horrible addiction is.
I mean, do you actually communicate with others, or do you just...
I do. No, I do. I read it. I use it a lot as a reader, but also, I mean, the thing that I think, if there's an actual good thing about it, is, I'll have film students or younger people just like send me a tweet with like a question, or I'll engage in a discussion with somebody that I don't know, that I never would have in 1,000 years connected with otherwise. And that's an upside to it, but the overwhelming downside, just in terms of, a portion of your head constantly being in this virtual space, it is a lot like, like Cohen in the Zero Theorem.
But that's what worries me about it.
Yeah, it should.
There's a kind of feeling that, I mean, I like Facebook. I use, I promote whatever I'm doing. I'm trying, use it for that as a little billboard. But I also use it to play. If I got a silly idea, I can do something and stick it there and get an immediate response. Yeah. And actually, which is the fun part, is that people's responses are funnier and cleverer than what I've been doing. That's lovely. But it's the need, and that's the Twitter thing, is where the politeness, the protocol of the business. You've got to respond or don't. I was talking to Sanjeev Bhaskar, who's a wonderful comedian actor. He's in Zero Theorem. He's the head doctor, the Sikh doctor. Yeah. And he says it just, if somebody writes something really shitty to him, if he doesn't respond, that's kind of response that has certain ramifications. There's no way out of the communication, no matter what you do in a strange way. Is what. Yeah. And doesn't it consume too much of your time? Because that's my problem. I just want to spend more time with myself and be able to think and read and do things.
Too much of your time and too much of your attention, even when you're not on it. If I get, and people are generally pretty nice to me. I've been lucky on Twitter. There are people who just get abuse, and I don't know how they deal with it. But if I get something even slightly shitty said to me, that's where my head's at for the rest of the day. I'm walking around with that echoing in my head and thinking, how am I going to respond to that? And
I mean, that's the problem, because at least if we get a bad review, it doesn't consume that much of our life.
Right.
It's there, but it's not every day something coming out. It's like, I mean, that's my fear. That's really my fear of it. Are people, and the other fear, I suppose, is a kind of feeling about politics where one can spend all your energy on that rather than getting involved in things that may or may not be important.
That's a really interesting part of it that's still playing itself out is, exactly how useful it is. Because I don't know, I honestly go back and forth. I don't have it because I think it is good that people are talking about this in a big public forum, but how much does that then become this thing where we feel satisfied just talking about it in a big public forum?
That's exactly right. It was my feeling always about doing comedy and satire, because it is the pressure. It takes the pressure off because people are laughing rather than going out and getting angry enough to do something.
Well, so the anger, the fact that you mentioned the anger, I mean, there's another layer just to talk about the peeling the onion of the fear we should have of this. I mean, there's another layer that I've just discovered in myself recently, which is even scarier, which is I find I'm slowly losing the ability to feel anger at stuff that I read online. I find that I'm becoming numb to it just out of necessity, almost like my body's natural defense, and that's almost more scary, I guess. I don't know. Is
it a form of cynicism, or is it the lack of power to do anything about it? So it's a form of impotence.
I guess it's a form of cynicism about the online world, and it's a form of cynicism not about the issue. So maybe it's a good thing. It's a form of cynicism in terms of, oh, he's saying that to get attention. I'm not going to get angry about this piece that somebody wrote because they wrote it so I would get angry and say, isn't this awful, and link to it. And I feel like I intellectually always knew that, but I'm increasingly feeling this dulled sort of I don't actually care enough, and I don't know, maybe that's...
No. It's very funny. Literally, I was having this almost the same conversation last night about in Sanjay when somebody writes some rubbish, and ultimately... he finally responded and just said, it's something that either not forgive, but learn to live with other, learn to be more open.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know where it's all leading. It just is. It's a fact. Yeah. And it's part of our lives now, and we can choose to, participate, or you walk away from it.
Sure. It is interesting. I wanted to ask you, switching a little bit, but a little bit on the same thing. I wanted to ask you about this thing I read about with the Zero Theorem, maxi vision, and the fact that which was, I guess, the format you shot on, but more than that, the fact that you shot it 16:9 specifically so it could kind of work on any screen, which pertains a little bit to what we're talking about. And I noticed the rounded corners, which I just thought was whatever I was watching it on, but then I realized that's part of it. I really loved that. There was something really pleasing about that. I'm not sure why.
Well, this is my. I think that nobody in all the interviews I've done, they've never picked up on this. I keep saying this is the one-size-fits-all, full-gate, semi-vinyl motion picture. And I've been hoisted by my own petard. So I've made it 16:9, so it's the same on your iPhone, your TV screen, your computer screen, all that. Yeah. And all it's meant is that we're going out VOD and DVD before we go into the cinema in America.
You've made your own bed.
But I did it because I thought, okay, I'm tired of shooting something in widescreen and then having to crop it for the TV release. Let's do one thing so everybody, no matter how big or small, it'll be the exact same image. And then we went silly because we then shot, literally, it is because we shot film, it's full gate. And rather than using the safety area, I said, okay, let's just use the whole thing. And so you've got the corners of the gate, the round thing. And then, of course, with 260 digital effect shot, I couldn't say it was all vinyl. Because we did shoot on film. Now, what's interesting about it was how much energy and time I had to spend with the producers and the distributors, because the quality control people say, you can't do this. You see, there'll be black on the edge of the screen. And I said, it's just nonsense. Don't you guys go to the cinema ever and notice how when the curtains are there, often there's a bit of the actual film on the curtain on the side? so we've got a safety margin now. But to waste time because people, you can't do that. I just found that extraordinary. The real truth is, then we did 16:9. It was a moment when I wasn't thinking, and they asked me what format, and I said 16:9 because I'd gotten so used to talking about 16:9 rather than 1:8:5:1. So I tried to turn it into something that was, interesting. But it's nice, isn't it? Those little round corners. Because the last time we've seen that is in silent movies.
Yeah, no, completely. Yeah. So
there's a sense of nostalgia that nobody, I don't know if consciously they're aware of.
No, it harkens back to it. And I, completely. So do you, I want to see that. I watched it at home on I watched it on a bigger screen, but off of my computer. But I actually really want to see it in the theater. How do you? I don't know. How do you watch movies mostly these days? Do you watch a lot of movies at home? Do you still go to the theater? What do you do?
Well, I get my screeners that come award season. I watch, then I spend the rest of the year catching up on all of them. It's very bad because unless it's a screening of something that I really want to see, I tend to watch more things at home. Okay, I've got a big screen and all that, but it's most of the local cinemas I go to are really shitty.
Yeah,
and people are talking and moving around, and so it's kind of the sacred experience is no longer there in the cinema in so many cases.
Right.
Because cinema is like, for me, you go into the Holy of Holies, and it's a great black room, and there's this thing that just overwhelms you. I think what's intriguing now is when you see people watching things on their iPhone, because they are now the big thing. The film is the small thing they can control easily, which is not, what I think the experience of cinema should be, where you need to submit to it.
Yeah.
And whether you sit close to your big TV screens or not, that's your choice. But at least, I mean, people like you and myself, I think, watch seriously when I watch something. I mean, I don't care. At home, if I got into Breaking Bad and all that, and I've got a big computer screen, a 32-inch high def one, and I sit really close to it, and it's wonderful.
See, I have, and this is more my own weakness, but actually I find more and more the reason I go to the theater to watch movies is because if I sit at home, there's, the iPad within reach. Like I find that if my attention starts to drift a little, whereas in the theater, that's part of the experience of watching a movie. If your mind starts to wander at home, it's so easy to have the other distractions. It's weird, like more so than the big screen and the big sound. That's why I go to children? Theater. No, I don't. Yeah.
Oh, because my kids are all grown up, so it's usually just my wife and I watching. So it's pretty non-distraction. Yeah.
Very logistic.
But I think that's the worrying thing is that it's so easy to switch off, or if like part of the film which is running a bit long or slow, you're not engaged in the same way. Yeah, if you're sitting at home, what's that over there? and you're out of it by then. Where in the cinema you're trapped.
Exactly.
You have to sit there through the boring bit.
It feels pathetic that I need to be trapped to pay attention to a movie.
This is really worrying because you're much younger than me and you're already falling apart.
I know, man. I'm a mess. This is why I needed this time with you to refocus myself.
Do you have a new project?
I'm doing a Star Wars movie. I'm doing next Star Wars movie.
Wow.
Yeah. It's it's crazy. I'm writing it and directing it. The next one after this one.
What does that feel like when you take over somebody else's world?
Well, it's it's been. I'm just starting into it, so but I mean, so far it's been nothing but I mean, honestly, it's the most fun I've ever had writing. Right. It's just joyous. But also for me personally, you know, I grew up not just watching those movies, but playing with those toys. And so as a little kid, the first movies I was making in my head were set in this world. Yeah. So a big part of it is, you know, that kind of direct connection. It's almost like a automatic jacking in back into childhood in a weird way, I guess. But I don't know. Ask me again in a few years, and I'll be able to talk about
I'm curious what if you actually saw your first Star Wars on an iPad, would you have been
touche? I guess that we'll find out in 30 years what the effect of that is.
Is George looking over your shoulder?
No, not at all. He's you know, he sold the company to Disney, so he's you know,
that's
he's
right.
kind of yeah. So he's kind of stepped back, and it's Kathy Kennedy is running Lucasfilm, and her
wonderful. Kathy's
she's great, man. Yeah, I love her.
I mean, do you feel a different kind of responsibility because of because it is Star Wars, or are you free? Do you feel?
And again, I'm figuring it out, you know, as I go. I'm kind of dancing on top of the avalanche a little bit, so I'll have more perspective on it in a while. But it's a balance of trying to remembering what really inspires you about it. But I think you can probably go to the wrong place by feeling too responsible to it. I think, you know, you have to keep your head loose enough, I think, to tell a story you care about, you know.
That's what's interesting. That's what's interesting from my point of view. Is for you to take it on and make it yours.
Yeah.
And still with respect for what it is and was.
Right. Because it's a weird balance. Yeah.
Yeah, but because otherwise it's morbid almost before it begins.
Well, that's been the great thing about, I mean, you know, Kathy and her whole creative team have been just so insistent on all the filmmakers they're hiring for these new movies. Just we want you to take it and turn it into something that you really care about. And we'll see how the process plays out. But so far, I mean, that's a big part of the reason I'm in it, is just because that seems to be their attitude towards it. It's really exciting, actually. But,
if you bring Yoda back, please bring Frank Oz back as well.
Oh, are you kidding? How could you not? We got to get you in there as a Hutt.
It was very funny because I had I bumped into George at Cannes a couple of years ago, and he started going on about digital this, that, and the other thing. We were all chatting away. And he kept going on about how the digital Yoda was so much better than the hand puppet Yoda. And I couldn't get through to him. He couldn't see how wrong he was. He said the nuances were so much better. It could be exactly. It was, and I think that's what's so extraordinary that because George has been fantastic. He's given us all this stuff. He's given us the digital film world basically, and yet can't see a good performer with his hands up the backside of a puppet can create more reality and believability and character.
I don't know why it's a small thing, but one of the things that just made me so happy in Zero Theorem was at the end, after he pulls out all the hoses from the machine, the moment where the hoses go back up onto the machine. And I looked at it and I wound it back. I looked at it again after I'd finished watching the movie. I'm like, he reversed it. That's just...
He certainly did.
That's
awesome.
What
I did, because it was one of the first effects I do. Well, that's a cheap one. I can do that. I know about reverse.
It was so cool looking and uncanny. It looked real. As opposed to CG snaky wires going perfectly up into it. It had that surreal sort of, but I did that as a kid with home movies. And so when I'm like, there's something really familiar about that motion. What is that? And that's, made me happy.
That's great that you spotted it, because nobody else has. I mean, I sat here at home with my little digital camera pointing at some cables, and I kept dropping them.
Yeah.
That's great. It works.
It's beautiful.
This is Nick Dawson from Talkhouse Film, and you've been listening to the first part of Rian Johnson's conversation with Terry Gilliam for the Talkhouse Film podcast. For more filmmakers talking film, including part 2 of this podcast, visit thetalkhouse.com/film. Subscribe to Talkhouse Film and Talkhouse Music podcasts on iTunes, where you can find all our previous episodes. And while you're there, please rate and review if you can. Hi, I'm Nick Dawson, the Editor-in-Chief of Talkhouse Film, and you're listening to the Talkhouse Film Podcast. This is the second part of the fascinating conversation between Rian Johnson and Terry Gilliam. Over the next 20-odd minutes, you'll hear them touch on such varied subjects as piracy, magic, directing operas, and the horror of nature, plus Johnson's upcoming Star Wars Episode VIII and Gilliam's long-gestating projects, The Man Who Killed Don Quixote and The Defective Detective. So, let's get started.
I was actually going to ask you about the Holy Family, about the short that you did.
That's a nice one. Thank you.
Yeah. How did that? Because I actually just got a chance to watch it a few days ago. I just rented it off your site, and it's really it's beautiful, and it also, I don't know, I don't know if I'm just connecting it up to, I don't know if this is annoying me connecting it to other films, but the same way the Zero Theorem connected up with me with Brazil, this connected up with Time Bandits, just in the way that it is this genuinely horrifying child's view of the world, and you're a little person in this world, this uncanny space that you don't know the rules for. That feels really dangerous. But what is that from?
It's a pasta company. It's based in Naples. It's a family-run thing, and they called Garofalo, and they make literally the best pasta in Italy, and it's sold everywhere. But rather than putting money into television ads, and because they love movies, and so every year they give a director a little bit of money. I mean, the budgets are very small, to make a film, like a 15-minute film that they will then put into the cinemas as a short before the feature. And I was asked to do one, and I've always been, enamored and mystified by Naples, in particular, this street called San Gregorio Armeno, where they sell all the stuff that you see in the film. Basically, they sell these nativity scenes at Christmas time, and there's also the whole history of Pulcinella in Naples is very dark, grotesque characters that. They're carved in all these various little tableaus that I've done. Yeah. And that's where it began. It was just simply that. And I just wanted to do a story about San Gregorio. And so, okay. And then I found out, that, once I sort of started down this road, the idea that, if you steal a little Pulcinella doll, that's okay as long as you give it away. But to keep it is wrong. I love the idea that thievery there's nothing wrong with it as long as you pass it on to somebody else.
as a director with his movies in the digital space, I'd be careful about espousing that belief.
It's done. I've given up on that. In fact, years ago when piracy was going on like mad, I kept going around saying, "Yeah, go right ahead," because I haven't seen a penny from the studios in any of these films. So I'm glad somebody's making money off it. And so we just literally, I had like a couple of weeks prep on it, and we shot it in a week. And it was so easy. I wrote it in 20 minutes. It was just easy. Yeah. And then I had a joy just working in Naples and finding, places to make all this stuff happening. And I'm really pleased with it. And the great thing is, it opened. It was a short film before Terry Malick's Tree of Life, but at least the audience had a few laughs that evening.
That's gorgeous, man.
But it was great to do a short film. You must have done short films at some point.
I grew up doing them, but I've never done that where I've, since I've been working, I've never done them that it wasn't just me goofing off with friends, where it's actually doing it kind of for real, I guess.
Yeah.
But I'll bet that but you do commercials and stuff too, right?
Once every 10 years I'll do one when I get really depressed knowing I'll never be able to get somebody to make a film ever again.
Okay, so what are you working on now? What it was the next Terry Gilliam movie I get to obsess over?
No, I'm back in the default position of let's get Quixote going again.
Right. Is that what you're?
What happens? We'll see what happens. We're at early stages. I mean, I got the two main characters sorted out, and then discovered that this film that wasn't supposed to be going is suddenly going, and now it's just going to work out. When can we? I don't know. At every point, it's basically a doomed project, and maybe that's why I keep going back to it as some sort of 19th century romantic idea of
You're tilting at windmills and.
No, it's more. Actually, it's probably more Greek. It's Sisyphus.
Oh no!
It goes on. What do you? It's the Star Wars. When do you start shooting? Do you have a plan yet? Is that scheduled?
There's a plan. They have release dates for the next, however many movies. Yeah, it's we start shooting. It's not for a while. It's not for like another year or so. But I need to write the script. I'm just starting right now writing. So
I have a feeling to get the script. Yeah.
Feeling I'm going to need all that time probably.
Will you be coming to London to shoot or not?
Oh yeah, we'll be shooting at Pinewood.
You have to give us a shout.
That would be lovely, man. I don't know if we had dinner. You and I had dinner years ago at the Sitges Film Festival. We had dinner and then we went to see The Holy Mountain. We walked across town and saw a midnight show.
Yes.
And I feel like I have there is an interaction we had during dinner that is one of the social interactions I regret most in my life. I feel like this is going to turn into a confessional. So I feel like I have to apologize to you. So I don't know if you remember, a magician came up to the table while we were having dinner and started performing some tricks. And he did this rope trick. And it was awesome. And we all were really delighted by it. And then you looked at me and you said, you know how he did that, didn't you? And I said, well, yeah, I know how he did it. And he goes, and you said, how did he do it? And I wanted to look cool in front of you. And so I told you how he did it. And I wish that is one of the things I think about this a lot. If I had a time machine, I would go back to that moment and not tell you how he did the trick. I still feel really shitty that I told you that, because instantly, you could see the joy die in your eyes. But I've carried that moment with me, and now I feel like it's lifted off my shoulders getting to confess it to you here. So I apologize for killing you.
So that's why I've been so miserable for so many years.
I figured. I thought I'd relieve you of the burden. Aren't you glad we had this time?
Yes, I know. I know who to go hunting for now, who must die as a sacrifice.
Rian Johnson must die.
Oh, God. I forgot all about that. But magic is such one of the great things. And I have because I've got a friend, Ricky Jay, I know well.
Ricky really well, actually, yeah. I've known him for years.
Well, he's one of the greats. And every time I come out to L.A., somebody usually organizes a dinner. And apparently I'm the only one at the table that's allowed to ask him to do a trick with And every time he does it, and even ones I know roughly how they're done, it's just astonishing, his skill. It's so brilliant.
And the way that he contextualizes it, there's something really, what's really magical is his, his attitude towards the form of it. And it's a strange thing also, because exactly that thing with telling the rope trick, Ricky would be horrified if he heard that I did that. His respect for what actually makes magic magical, the unknown, which increasingly today there's less and less of that unknown stuff in the world. Again, coming back to the Zero Theorem, there's everyone wants to line up all the boxes and figure it all out, and there's this increasing sense that we can now, and I don't know if that's a good thing.
But this is the problem. I don't want the mystery solved. I want life to maintain mystery. This is why the Greeks were always pretty good with it was the mystery. It wasn't that everything was explained. There wasn't one little god that took charge of it all. It was the mystery. And I think people have really lost the sense of wonder And because we constantly explain, we describe, explain, put things in boxes, put labels on them.
Terry, you're breaking up a little.
I've got a line in Quixote where one character that says, and that's right. He says, we can go to the police and explain what happened. And Quixote says, what? You think explaining explains things?
I love that.
That sums it up for me.
On the flip side, though, I mean, I don't know. There is also something romantic about, if that's the overall tide of culture now, is losing the wonder. Is, does it make you feel a little more special that you still value that and you're still looking on, does it make lifting up the rock and finding this secret thing underneath and not solving it feel even a little more special because the world that you're doing that in opposition to is so much more strong and prominent, I guess? Or is that just a nice spin on it? I don't know.
No, I think it is this problem of trying to retain your childlikeness or childness. I don't know. Yeah. It's that because and that's the hard thing about getting older. Things become more and more repetitive, more and more predictable. The same thing keeps happening. I mean, it's like, and it does drive me crazy because I want to be the kid that, somebody looks out there and you gasp. There's something wonderful. I mean, right now, outside my computer screen sits between two windows, and outside is these great silver birches, pendulous silver birches that swing. Mm-hmm. And I spend more time just staring at them. I'm not trying to explain them, trying to think about just watching, the whole business of nature functioning. And it's that. I still think maybe that's the thing. It's always to fear technology and all of the layers that are put between us and the natural world, because the natural world is infinitely amazing and magical.
And what do you do to get your head back? And I mean, I don't know, how do you recharge your battery? Do you travel a lot? Do you go?
No, I've got a house in Italy up on a hill with a little bit of a castle ruin, and there's no television, no telephone, no games, nothing. Yeah. That's and you force yourself back into the maw of nature and realize, God, it's rough. Get back in the car, close the windows.
Here's the comedian who said, if nature is so great, why are all the bugs trying to get into my house?
Exactly. So I was describing something the other day. I had to go to this convention, Dragon Con in Atlanta this last weekend, and I was talking about, I got onto my house in Italy and how wonderful it was. I said, but if bugs could scream, the evening as the sun's setting and the swallows are sweeping here and there and the bats are beginning to come out, it would be horrific when all these screaming insects die horribly in the maw of these animals. And one day I'm going to have to do that. When bugs scream, it'll be called.
Oh my God. You've sold my tickets. I'm there. Take my money.
God.
Jesus, man. There's one other thing I wanted. Oh wait, actually, really quick. So this is something that I feel like I've been fascinated by this for a long while, and I only know the title of this mysterious project I've heard of yours, but just based on the title, this is the best movie I've ever heard. Defective Detective. Is this something that you're, and I have no idea what the state of this is, just something that I know for years I've heard, there's this Terry Gilliam project, Defective Detective. Is that something that's bouncing around still?
Funny, only because last night I was emailing Richard LeConvinays, who wrote it with me after Fisher King, and I've got to come to New York in a week and a bit to promote Zero Theorem, and we're getting together to see if in this new world of 16 by 9, we can adapt the film into like an 8-part miniseries and get it made.
Wow. That's
Isn't
exciting.
It sad that, but that's, now that I'm, having watched Breaking Bad and binged my way through it, I'm beginning to think, films, oh God, the fact that cable is producing so much wonderful work. And it reaches audiences and blah, blah, blah. I mean, you've made a wise choice with Star Wars because you'll have an audience no matter what you do.
I don't know. You always get you always get the audience that, I don't know. I try to be really optimistic that even with the smaller, it's just a matter of the time frame over which it's discovered by the audience who's going to appreciate it. It's maybe expanded, but I do think that like the smaller films that we make find the people who need to see them one way or another. I think I don't know, and maybe
I agree with you. I'm just getting old and I'm less patient. I'm going to die soon.
Well, that's exciting, and I don't know. I feel like that's really exciting. The notion of you working in that medium and also in that kind of longer serialized. It always feels like your films are bursting at the edges with ideas. Yeah. The notion that you would have 10 hours of storytelling to actually, and I'm sure that'll be bursting at the edges then, right? It will feel like 20 hours.
Well, we have to add a lot more than I thought, because it was always a struggle to keep it in under 2.5 hours. What we were doing. Yeah. I don't know. Again, a lot depends on what the budgets are like, because it's a lot. We've got to create a child's fantasy world. Okay. With a middle-aged New York detective who's just really lost it, basically, with him. But the idea, simple premise, i.e., kind of a burnt-out, hard-bitten, cynical cop ends up in a child's fantasy world where the rules are children's rules.
Oh, that sounds beautiful.
Yeah, I know. It's really nice. It's a good script. And we just, for a variety of reasons, it doesn't happen. I mean, you must have a few scripts sitting around that have never happened.
Oh, I wish, man. I'm such a slow writer. That's writing is such a painful process for me, and I don't know. I wish I had a couple in the drawer, but it's the opposite problem, I guess. Are you going to do any more? I was really disappointed, actually. I was just poking around online before this interview, and I saw the opera that you just directed. I was really disappointed that I didn't know about it, or I would have gone to see it, actually. Are you going to? How was that experience? Are you going to do that again, or?
Well, I've done 2 now, and they've both been successful, and they've both been painful.
How so? Like, what's that?
I don't know, because it's a completely different rhythm than film, because you rehearse for a couple months, and it's not until the opening night do you know whether you've pulled it off.
Right.
I mean, film, we've got an editing room for 6 months. Right. It's strangely enough, I don't get the same fulfillment out of it, because all I know is like the last one. It's 2,500 people a night, 8 performances. That's not many people that get to see it. And I also feel that opera audiences are pushovers. They're much easier to fool than a cinema-going audience. It's like they pay so much money for their seats; they're determined to enjoy
it. Well, and I'm sure that I'm also sure that a lot of, there's probably a lot of people who don't even usually go to the opera who see that you directed it and show up for it, and probably are kind of, an easy lay in the best way, though, where they're experiencing this for the first time and are actually just kind of awed by the form of it, probably.
It was funny with Faust. 41% of the audience had never been to the opera before.
Oh wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I know, and that's what I really love. I mean, my daughter, who is like 30 years old, has never been to the opera. Because I don't go to the opera. I don't really like opera. I like listening to opera. I don't often like watching it because.
Oh, really?
It has something to do with the casting. You got people with great voices, but the body and the face don't match the character they're playing.
I guess that's
and
true.
The age. So all of that, I can only suspend my disbelief so far. Now, that's just a fat, ugly lady who's pretending to be a 16-year-old virgin. What are we talking about?
Fair enough.
And so I'm happy to go to opera and keep my eyes closed. I really enjoy that. It's
funny.
But because I'm not a huge opera buff, and maybe that was what was interesting. I became this fresh way of looking at how you do the stuff, because I've got no respect for the form, because I don't know what the form is.
I wish I could have seen it.
And my daughter was watching it, and she said, "It's like, oh." One night I was like, I was in a movie for a moment, and then suddenly they were there on the stage, and it was like, whoa! I was just doing some old 19th century tricks, basically.
Right. And I think about the stagecraft, like in the Munchausen scene. It seems like it would be a natural fit.
Yeah. But it's a different world. It's a different world because this stuff has been written, say, in both, like this on Cellini. Berlioz had 3 goes at it, and he never pulled it off. It didn't work. So my attitude was going, what he needed was a good editor. I understand the problem, because he and I share the same inability. Just keep it simple, cut it don't have 5 endings to it. Just tell the story straight. Right. So I just went in there with the axe and started to work through it. But then I have to confront the musical side, the musos, as I call them. And it's like, and the conductor, at one point in our discussions or arguments, and we were in rehearsal, he said, "No, my job is to curate this piece." And I said, "No, I'm trying to create something that'll work. People are going to pay money." And I thought that's the problem, is there so many people within the business that are so, it's not even reverential. They worship the stuff. Yeah. And you've got to bring it in, to me, my approach is both. You've got to bring it into the 21st century. I'm not, and I have total respect for the work. That's the point.
Sure.
Come on, let's do something anyway. But I've done 2, and I'm not jumping up and down to do another one at the moment. But I know as I enter the veil of despond, there'll be the moment when I weaken.
I look forward to your weakness. It's amazing what a madman with an axe and a healthy lack of respect can accomplish. So, Terry, I don't want to keep you late. I feel like we've had our time together.
I think we have. It's been good talking to you.
It's been so lovely getting to talk to you, man. Thank you so much for doing this. And good luck with the movie. I really love the Zero Theorem, and I'm so happy.
It's nice to actually talk to somebody who does, because there's so many who just hate it.
Oh, they're not here. It's for us.
Great.
All right, thanks, Terry. Take care,
and
man.
Good luck with Star Wars. Say hello to Kathy if ever you bump into her, because I love her. She's great.
No, I absolutely will. I'll pass that on. All right, thanks, Terry. All right, take care.
This is Nick Dawson from Talkhouse Film, and you've been listening to the concluding part of Rian Johnson's conversation with Terry Gilliam for the Talkhouse Film podcast. For more filmmakers talking film, including the first part of this podcast, visit thetalkhouse.com/film. Subscribe to Talkhouse Film and Talkhouse Music podcasts on iTunes, where you can find all our previous episodes. And while you're there, please rate and review if you can.